The Browns have made some coaching changes this morning, including one confirmed firing, one reported but not confirmed firing, and then one coach not retained. So we're going to break it all down on today's video and run through some possible early replacement options. But a really quick reminder, make sure your notifications on. That way when news breaks throughout the offseason, you are not in the dark. And if you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Join the channel today. We are growing at a rapid rate, almost at 33,100 subscribers. So, like many of you, I woke up this morning to a notification from Ian Rappaport saying the Browns are going through the offensive staff role evaluation process. Source said running back coach Stump Mitchell has been fired, as Josina Anderson reported. Tight end coach T.C. McCartney will not be retained. Basically a firing, but they don't have to actually fire him since his contract was up. And then finally, and maybe most noteworthy, offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt remains under contract with no other final decision made. Now, that's what Ian Rappaport said. Josina Anderson is saying that Alex Van Pelt informed some of his members of the team yesterday he was let go Tuesday afternoon upon hearing this specific news and received messages of condolences to that end, along with Mitchell and McCartney per source. So Josina Anderson went on ESPN and said offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt is done in Cleveland. The Browns may not have officially announced it yet, but it is going to come down the pipeline sooner rather than later. So we'll keep an eye on it, and potentially by the time you are watching this, the news has already been confirmed. But Josina is usually pretty spot on with these reports. Now, I did not see this coming. I did not see the Browns moving on from 3 coaches after this season. I understand that the way they ended the year was not very inspiring, but all in all, this coaching staff and this locker room did a tremendous job of overcoming so many injuries this year. But I think we can take a page from last offseason's book, which is Kevin Stefanski, he's not going to settle, right? He moved on from Joe Woods, which was an obvious move that had to be made. But the Mike Prefer firing, I don't think that's something many of us saw. But he saw an opportunity to get better, right? He went out and got Bubba Ventrone from the Indianapolis Colts. And I think right now Kevin Stefanski might be sitting there thinking, can we do better? And maybe he believes they can do better at offensive coordinator. I think a big reason why the Browns are reportedly moving on from AVP is Deshaun Watson, right? Unfortunately, Deshaun Watson through 2 seasons has been 2 things. A tad bit inconsistent, whether it's bad first half, good second half, or it's lack of availability. Now, the lack of availability part is not on AVP. He can't control Deshaun Watson's shoulder or anything like that. But he can control the consistency element. And I'm guessing Kevin Stefanski is sitting there thinking to himself right now, we're entering year 3 with Deshaun Watson. We don't seem to have a great concrete plan in place for an offense designed around Deshaun Watson, right? 2 years in Cleveland so far, and we're still figuring it out. That is not acceptable. So let's go get an offensive coordinator that's got a good plan in place as to how to best maximize Deshaun Watson's skills and strengths. And he gave AVP a crack at it, and 2 years into the job, they don't seem to have a clear answer because Kevin Stefanski had a better offense for Joe Flacco than they did for Deshaun Watson in a lot of ways. Now, who could they replace AVP with? I've got some 10 candidates to keep an eye on here. Number 1 is Shane Waldron. He is still the Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator, but just like Kellen Moore, when your head coach is fired and a new head coach comes into town, they often bring their own staff. So both those guys could be let go as a result. Klint Kubiak, of course, Gary Kubiak's son. He was with the Denver Broncos a few seasons ago. He's been in San Francisco most recently. He's done a terrific job. And, of course, everyone is chasing that Kubiak-Shanahan tree. How about former Arizona Cardinals head coach Kliff Kingsbury? He was the QB coach for USC this past season. He might be trying to get back into the NFL, so that could be a name to keep an eye on. The Rams passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach Zac Robinson has been getting a ton of buzz this offseason, so keep an eye on that name right there. Moving along here, Miami Dolphins passing game coordinator and QB coach Darrell Bevell. He was the OC for Seattle back when they won a Super Bowl, so he's a very popular name, and I think he's done a tremendous job with Tua, so he could come over and get things going with Watson. If you're looking for an in-house option, it could be the Browns wide receivers coach Chad O'Shea. I don't think this one is very likely, but if Kevin Stefanski has been blown away by the preparation and the work that O'Shea has done in Berea, maybe they decide to keep it in-house. Now, some swinging for the fences moves. How about former head coach Arthur Smith of the Atlanta Falcons? He was the Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator before getting the head coaching gig down in ATL. So if he's trying to get back into the NFL after being fired a few weeks ago, maybe an OC job in Cleveland with a pretty good offense is a nice landing spot for him. Buccaneers former offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich. Of course, he coached the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to a Super Bowl. Now, they also had a guy named Tom Brady, so that probably played a little bit of a factor into it, but that's a name to keep an eye on. And then Greg Roman. If you want to talk about getting the most out of your quarterback in some ways, he's the guy for the job. I mean, like, he got Lamar Jackson a MVP, but also he ran that offense somewhat into the ground in terms of predictability and a great run game, but a horrible passing game at the end of his time in Baltimore. So I'm not over the moon for Greg Roman, but I do think Greg Roman is one of the better candidates out there. Now, as for my pick, I would go with Shane Waldron. Now, he is still under contract in Seattle, but if the Seahawks' new head coach comes in and wants to bring his own staff in, Shane Waldron could be a casualty, but he has been nothing short of excellent so far in the Pacific Northwest. 3 years already as the Seahawks offensive coordinator, and he took Geno Smith, a guy that everyone just kicked to the curb, and he brought him to the postseason, and he nearly had them back in the postseason this year. Before being the Seahawks OC, he was with the Rams under Sean McVay in various coaching roles, and he also has 2 Super Bowl rings. That's early in his career before he was really a coach, more of just an assistant, but they do have to count. So 2-time Super Bowl champion Shane Waldron could be a name to keep an eye on if the Seahawks do end up moving on from him. Now, who do you want to hire as the offensive coordinator? Get in the comment section right now. Drop a name down below who you'd like to see the next Browns OC if Cleveland truly is moving on from AVP. Now, next up on the show, we're going to talk about the other 2 coaches that the Browns are moving on from, including Stump Mitchell, who's got, I'll say it, top 10 beard in the country. I mean, definitely in the NFL, and I think it might be across the entire nation. So, unfortunately, this is a bitter moment because I was a big fan of Coach Mitchell. But before we get to all that good stuff, I do have to tell you guys about our sponsor today, which is Factor. Thanks to Factor, you can get started on your resolutions this year so you are ready for 2024. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores, prep work, and cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. Skip the overpriced takeout trap. Factor is cheaper and way more delicious than takeout. Get chef-crafted, restaurant-quality meals delivered right to your door. They are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, which means more time for you. Head to factormeals.com/BrownsChat50 and use code BrownsChat50 to get 50% off. That's code BrownsChat50 at factormeals.com/BrownsChat50 to get 50% off. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. So Stump Mitchell was fired today, and I was a fan of Coach Mitchell, but I can see the writing on the wall when the Browns' ground game this year was abysmal. I mean, you look at the 2023 rushing stats for the Browns, they were top 5 in attempts, and they finished 12th in yards. Just incredibly inefficient, right? You are just force-feeding the football on the ground, and you're not even finishing top 10 in rushing yards. Average under 4 yards a pop, and I bet Nick Chubb played a big factor in even being close to 4 yards a pop. That finishes 26 in the NFL, and they finished middle of the pack in touchdowns, and they have Kareem Hunt to thank for that. But Stump Mitchell was one of the few coaches retained by Kevin Stefanski when he took over as the head coach in Cleveland. He's been with the Browns back since 2019, and you can see that he's done a tremendous job as the Browns running back coach, right? From 2019 to 2022, Cleveland finished top 10 in average rushing yards. However, this year, they took a big step back. Why? They lost a guy named Nicholas Jamal Chubb. That may play a factor. I'm just going to put that out there. But ultimately, when you're an NFL coach, you have to be able to overcome injuries, right? You can't not be so one-dimensional. And the Browns' ground game this year showed that without Nick Chubb, they didn't have a whole lot of pop on the ground. I mean, Kareem Hunt, he came in 2-3 weeks into the season. He gave us 9 touchdowns, but he also had 3 yards a carry. Jerome Ford just never showed that burst. And again, this is not all on Stump Mitchell, but at the end of the day, someone has to be held accountable. And I think Kevin Stefanski saw that Stump Mitchell without Nick Chubb might not be the best running back coach. I also think the Browns' ground game after the bye was passable, right? You were getting by. But then you had a bad stretch of weeks 11 through 18 where you were averaging 3.3 yards a carry and you were hardly moving the ball on the ground whatsoever. And then you toss in a very dreadful postseason performance on the ground where the Browns got nothing from either running back all game long. And Stefanski ultimately made a tough decision of, hey, you did a lot of great things for us, Coach Mitchell, but ultimately this was too big of a disaster without Nick Chubb. And we can't just run it back and hope that Nick Chubb is healthy next year. And if not, we're going to have a similar production on the ground without him. The other coach that the Browns are moving on from, this is T.C. McCartney. He is the tight ends coach. He's been in this role for 2 years. The Browns did not fire him technically. His contract was up, and they are not retaining him. So ultimately, Kevin Stefanski just gets to avoid saying the words "you're fired" without, explicitly saying them. But he's basically more or less getting fired as not being retained here. So Browns, this is a move that I didn't see coming. David Njoku had a great year, but I'm sure there are so many things that go on inside the walls of the Browns headquarters that we don't know about from the outside, and maybe this is one of those stories here. Before we get on out of here, let's pick a card. I was thinking today, a couple guys got fired, and that's not something to ever celebrate. But at the end of the day, the NFL it's sports, and people lose their jobs, and that's just a part of the beast. You know that at some point you're probably going to get fired, no matter how good you are. Even Bill Belichick, he got fired multiple times. Got fired by the Ravens. He got fired kind of by the Patriots. So it happens. It happens. Big Tex. Shout out to Big Tex, by the way. Came in early with me today to help get this Browns video ASAP Rocky. Which card do you want to go with?
Let's go 6 of spades.
6 of spades?
Yes,
I'm going to go 3 of diamonds. I could shuffle. All right, you ready? 2 of diamonds. 2 of diamonds. That's going to do it for us on this edition of the Cleveland Browns Report. Thank you so much for tuning in. If we get more news and rumors and updates, we'll make sure to keep you guys informed.